I had just retired when my daughter-in-law called. "I'm going to leave my 3 kids with you. After all, you don't do anything anymore. Watch them while I travel." I smiled, ended the call, and felt something settle that I hadn't felt in years. A calm, steady refusal to be invisible. I'm 67. I've buried a husband and raised a son, and the first thing I did was dust off a notebook, set a code word with the school, and build a paper trail so precise it would speak louder than anyone's insults. That phone call was only the spark. What followed was a picnic that wasn't a hot mic that told the truth, and a courtroom that finally listened. Before I keep going, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Arliss. 35 years teaching 4th graders at Lincoln Elementary in Columbus, Ohio, prepared me for tantrums, tangled stories, and parents who swore the sun rose just for their child. None of it prepared me for my daughter-in-law, Kirill. That Monday afternoon, I was 2 days into retirement. If you've ever worked since 22 and only at 67 feel time open, like a clean porch in summer, you understand the hush in my living room. The coffee table was a map of the life I'd postponed brochures for Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, the Pacific Coast Highway, a sticky note that said, "September finally." My suitcase still carried a field trip tag. Teachers reuse everything. The clock over the mantel clicked toward 4. I breathed so. The house smelled of lemon oil and last night's pot roast. I was deciding between tour dates when the phone lit before the first ring. "Hey, Arliss," Kirill said, "no, hello, never mom." Her voice had that bright glaze people use when they've decided for you. "I've got an incredible opportunity. Paris. It'll change our lives." "Branson agrees you can help. Help how I asked." "With the kids. 2 weeks, maybe 3. You don't need to do much. You do nothing else anyway." She let the words sit like a folded napkin, tidy, dismissive. "I do nothing else," I repeated the way a teacher echoes a wrong answer before giving the right one. "Exactly," she chirped. "I'll drop them off tomorrow at 7. Don't give them junk like last time." Last time had been Christmas 2 hours before she'd swept them to the important grandparents, the ones with money. My knuckles found the table edge. "Kirill," I said, "I have plans." She laughed, bright and sharp. Plans. What plans can a retired old woman have knitting soap operas? Please, be useful for once. "I'm not watching them," I whispered. It felt like standing up in a boat. You're their grandmother. It's your obligation. Besides, Branson agrees. I pictured my son on evening shift at the plant, unaware she was dialing favors like a game show. "If you ever want to see your grandchildren again," she added, "sugar. Turning to salt, you'll cooperate." I decide if they have a grandmother. Something inside me didn't break, it woke. Injustice has a bell only teachers hear. I let silence do the grating. Then I softened my voice the way I used to with bullies who liked an audience. "All right, Carol," I said. "Bring them tomorrow. That's more like it. And try not to spoil them. Frankly, Arliss Michael would have been better off if you'd raised Branson right." The line clicked. The clock read 4:04. The brochures blurred. For a long breath, I studied my hands lined capable the same hands that tied shoes, signed permission slips, and held a science fair volcano with tape and faith. On the kitchen counter was a stack of manila envelopes. One had a single word in my handwriting. Later. I slid it open with a butter knife and slid out the checklist I'd kept since Richard died, copies of deeds, a bank contact, and the number of Maura, a former student who now worked at Child Protective Services. I added, "Kirill call Mon 4:0 p.m. You do nothing. Custody, demand, threat, re-access. Teacher's plan. It's how we breathe." I pinned a fresh page to the fridge with the blue State of Ohio Magnet House rules. Respect the house, no shouting, all communication in writing, medication logs, emergency contacts. Beneath it, kids sleep 8 p.m. Breakfast, oatmeal, fruit milk. The magnets clacked like small gavels. I made chamomile tea and watched the steam write cursive in the late light. In the hallway, Richard's photo in uniform caught the sun. "You do nothing," she'd said. I thought of those years after the pileup on I-70 double shifts, tutoring lunches packed from coupons and prayer. Doing nothing had kept this family fed. Doing nothing had kept us human. At my desk, Nook, I started a log, save voicemails, screenshot texts, timestamp exchanges, document drop-off times, keep voice calm no matter tone used against me. Then I opened the laptop and scrolled. Kirill's feed was a museum of proof, staged smiles, blessings, a post. Thanks to Arliss for watching the kids while we travel. Couldn't do it without you. I bookmarked it. I stepped onto the back porch. Gahanna's maples were the kind of green that says summer isn't leaving yet. I almost called Branson, my thumb hovering. Not yet. Clean lines matter. If I warned him now, she'd recast the story and erase the clock. Quiet is sometimes the only fair witness. By 6, I had the guest room made-up labels on the pantry bins and a small stack of library picture books on the ottoman. I set out inhalers and thermometers because grandmothers know which emergencies knock at night. I slid the later envelope back to the center of the table where anyone could see it. A car hummed up the drive at 7:31. Too soon. She'd said tomorrow. I dried my hands and felt my breath settle like a coin in jar. The doorbell rang once, then again, insisting. I set the kettle to low and walked to the door, passing the fridge, where the house rules shone in the light. I rested my palm on the knob. The bell rang a third time. Somewhere in me, the old classroom voice rose, the one that could quiet 30 children with a whisper. I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch taut like the start of a lesson everyone would remember. The doorbell was still echoing when I turned the knob. Carol stood on the porch, framed by the porch light. Arms crossed the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Her SUV idled at the curb trunk, gaping open like a jaw. 3 kids stood behind her, Kendrick, Anaya, and little Kyron, each clutching a tablet and looking anywhere but at me. Their shoulders said everything. Stay quiet, stay small, survive the visit. Evening, I said, voice calm as a measuring cup. You're early. I know. I like to be efficient, she replied, brushing past me without being invited. The scent of her perfume, too sweet, too strong, filled the foyer before she did. She scanned the entryway as if checking for dust or proof that I was unfit. We didn't have dinner. They'll eat anything as long as it's not junk. You do keep decent food right, I manage. Good. Keep them on schedule. Lights out by 9, homework before screen time. And please don't fill their heads with your old-fashioned ideas. They're doing modern learning now. Her words were light, but each one hit like a pebble in a shoe, tiny, constant, meant to wear you down. I didn't flinch. The kids hovered near the door, silent, rehearsed mannequins. Kendrick's backpack sagged with something heavier than books. Shoes off inside, I said gently, pointing to the mat. They obeyed, eyes down. In the kitchen, my house rules were still pinned to the fridge. Carol stopped in front of them and read aloud with a dry laugh. Respect each space. Keep evidence of all communication. What's that supposed to mean, Arliss? You running a courtroom here? It keeps things clear, I said, folding a dish towel. Children like clear. She smirked. Right, because your son turned out so clear. The comment barely landed before I felt my pulse slow. Teachers learn the power of not answering. I guided the children to the table, setting out apple slices. This is your home for now. You know the routine. Kyron poked a slice. Mom says your kitchen is gross, Anaya added quickly. Dad's mean sometimes. And Grandma's rules are dumb, Kendrick muttered, glancing at her, not me. The chorus sounded rehearsed, each note flat and cautious. I knelt to Kieran's level. Well, I said, smiling just enough, let's see if the kitchen can prove her wrong. Carol began unloading the car, 2 giant suitcases, a grocery bag of processed snacks, no medication list, no hugs. She moved through my hallway like a health inspector, trailing judgment instead of dust. Oh, and the Wi-Fi password, write it down. They can't live without it. I imagine they'll survive 2 hours without I said. Her eyes narrowed, still trying to play the saint. I'm trying to play the adult. That earned a snort. She clapped her hands. Kids tell Grandma goodbye. None of them moved. She sighed theatrically and leaned close enough for me to see the tiny crack in her foundation powder. "Remember what I said," she whispered. I decide whether they have a grandmother. I met her stare head on, then decide wisely. I close the door with the same motion I'd used 1,000 times ending parent-teacher meetings, final, polite absolute. The latch clicked, sealing the house in quiet. The children stood uncertain. I took their coats, hung them on the rack, and said shoes on the mat, hands washed. Dinner in 10. Small rituals or fences against chaos. They followed slower than trust, but steady enough. I cooked grilled cheese, apples, and milk, the kind of simple meal that says the world isn't ending yet. Halfway through, Kendrick lingered at the sink while his siblings chased crumbs with napkins. He reached into his hoodie pocket and slipped something wrapped in tape onto the counter. "She didn't want me to see this," he whispered. It was a small USB drive, silver, worn to dull. My fingers stayed still. "Thank you," I said, sliding it into my apron pocket as if it were just another spoon. The boy exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all day. When the dishes were done, I tucked the USB into the later envelope on the dining hutch, noted the time, 8:52 p.m., and closed it with a paper clip. Discipline over impulse. That's how you survive a long game. Bedtime took the usual dance. Anaya wanted her tablet. Kyron begged for one more cartoon. I offered story time instead, a paperback about a fox finding its way home. They listened until their eyes gave up. Kendrick stayed quiet longest, then whispered, "Thanks for not yelling." After they slept, I tidied the counters, logged the evening's times and phrases in my notebook, her words, their tone, the USB's arrival. The routine steadied my hands. I poured myself a glass of water, turned off the light, and let the house hum in peace. My phone buzzed once on the table, a bank alert half hidden by the dim screen. Attempted activity flagged. I turned it face down. That could wait until morning. For tonight, the lesson was simple. Calm is not weakness, and silence remembers everything. The house was still dim when my alarm blinked, 6:58. I reached over, silenced it, and sat up before the second beep. Coffee was already measured in the pot from last night. Habit is a teacher's first language. The smell filled the kitchen as I unfolded the later envelope on the table. Inside the USB, Kendrick had given me the notes from yesterday and the list I'd made before bed. I smoothed each page flat, checked the time, and whispered the same line I'd told myself before every parent conference. Stay calm, stay factual, stay kind. The kids were still asleep. I had 30 minutes of quiet to work before the day began. The phone screen lit under my fingertips. The bank's number was already saved as fraud desk priority. I hit call. "Mrs. Harlan, this is Susan with security. How can I help you today?" "There's been an alert," I said. "I received a flagged transaction notice last night. I want to confirm activity on the minors' sub-accounts, the ones labeled for education." There was a brief pause, the clatter of typing. "I see attempted transfers, 3 of them, each rejected by our verification system. Would you like to place a full freeze?" "Yes, immediately. Keep the account intact under my name only. And please record this as a potential identity breach." She confirmed my birth date, address, and passphrase, Cardinal Teacher 75. Then came the click of keyboard strokes again. "It's secure now. Case number 2417AZ. You'll receive an email confirmation within minutes." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Teachers learn to say thank you even when the room is burning. By 7:20, I'd written the case number in my notebook, printed the confirmation email, and slipped both into a clear sleeve marked funds. My printer whirred softly. The sound was steadying. Beside it, my to-do list read, breakfast, check USB tape, stay composed. The children began stirring down the hallway. I poured milk into 3 bowls, laid out cereal, sliced apples, and scrambled 2 eggs each protein for courage fruit for focus. "Morning, team," I said as they shuffled in. Kendrick mumbled, "Morning." Anaya rubbed her eyes and Kyron climbed onto the chair backward. "Hand washing first," I reminded. They obeyed, sleepy and compliant. Carol's voice lingered in my head. Don't fill their heads with old-fashioned ideas, but the routine spoke louder. Dishes clinked, orange juice poured, and small conversation began to sprout. "Can we have Wi-Fi now?" Kendrick asked. After breakfast, I said, smiling, "Brains before screens." They rolled their eyes, but no one argued. When the plates were cleared, I approached the dining hutch. The USB sat exactly where I'd left it, tape still sealed tight. I wrote a new line in my logbook, 8:03 a.m., USB untouched, chain of custody intact. Then I closed the envelope and placed it back. Discipline over impulse, that rule saved me more times than luck ever had. At 9:02, the doorbell rang again. My chest tightened. I wiped my hands, walked calmly to the foyer, and opened the door. A woman stood there holding a clipboard and wearing a state badge, Asha Patel, Child Protective Services. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm responding to a report filed last night regarding possible neglect." "Then come in," I said, stepping aside. I like daylight and documentation. I reached up to turn on the small camera above the mantel, its red light blinking to life. She blinked, slightly surprised. "You're okay with me recording, I insist. It keeps everyone honest." We began the walkthrough. She noted the pantry labeled bins, expiration dates, visible shelves neat as lesson plans. In the hallway, she saw the house rules on the fridge, the meds binder open with inhalers logged the lunchboxes, packed and dated. "You're remarkably organized," she said. "Habit. Teachers never stop labeling things." In the den, she asked to speak with the children one by one. I stayed in the kitchen within sightline, but silent. I refilled their water cups, folded napkins, and listened only to the hum of her voice. The kids' tones were uncertain, but honest. Kendrick explained bedtime, Anaya mentioned breakfast, Kyron told her about the storybook Fox. When they finished, Asha joined me at the table. "Thank you for your cooperation," she said. "Can we compare notes?" I handed her my logbook. She matched my timestamps against her intake form meal's bedtime, and that exact 7:31 handoff. "Everything aligns," she said quietly. She hesitated before the next question. "Would you mind showing any messages or photos relevant to their stay?" I unlocked my phone, opened the photo log, clean counters, dinners, timestamps. "No speculation," I said, "only records." "That's perfect," she said. "We appreciate factual documentation." At the door, she scribbled on her form. "Provisional impression, stable, safe, consistent environment. We'll close this after one follow-up. Here's your case ID." I took the card, noted her badge number, and shook her hand. "You're welcome anytime. Just call first." Her car pulled away at 10:32. The house settled again quiet except for the refrigerator's hum. I exhaled, set the case card under a magnet, and reached for my coffee, now cold. But victory doesn't always come warm. Just then my phone buzzed. A school notification appeared, family volunteer night. Attendance required due to record mismatch signature file. I stared at it for a long second, then smiled to myself. One problem solved another, unfolding. That's how life works. I closed the laptop, straightened the tablecloth, and whispered, "All right, world, round 3. By early evening, I stood under the fluorescent buzz of the elementary gym, a ballpoint pen pressed into my palm like duty all over again. The floor smelled of wax, folding chairs scraped while parents traded quiet gossip over brownies. I signed the visitor sheet and lifted my head. The message from this morning had felt like a note stuffed in a locker, vague pointed, meant to rattle me. I wasn't rattled. I was ready. Mrs. Harlan, the volunteer coordinator, looked up from a laptop. Her badge read, "Patel Dia. We have a snag. Your hours from last month aren't showing under your name." "Then let's take a look," I said. She pulled a thick binder and flipped to the logs. There was my tidy block print from the night I sorted library books and stacked field day cones. A yellow sticky with my cell number clung to the sleeve. But on the spreadsheet taped beside it, the name column had been overwritten. A different name sat in my row, neat as a replacement tile. Ms. Patel frowned. "That's on us. Someone copied the wrong cell. I'm sorry." She corrected the database. A small square turned green. "Print, yes, please." She slid a fresh page across. I read the line the way I used to read directions before a test. Arliss Harlan, 3.5 hours verified. Not triumph, just gravity finding its level. The principal, Mr. Delgado, passed with a box of t-shirts. He paused. "Everything okay?" "Data entry error," Miss Patel said, holding up the reprint. "Fixed." He signed the margin, Delgado verified, and nodded to me. "Thanks for always showing up." The sting of record mismatch eased. "Thank you for checking," I said. Consistency matters. Before I left, I pulled the clipboard for next month forward and wrote my name clean and square. I dated it, photographed the page in view of staff, and emailed the photo to myself. Procedure is not drama. It's how you build a staircase when the ground slips. At home, after dark, the kitchen lights made islands on the counter. I plated meatloaf I'd sliced at noon, steamed green beans, buttered rolls. The kids drifted in on the smell. "Did you get in trouble?" Kyron asked. "Adults don't get in trouble for correcting a mistake," I said, sliding plates across. "We fix it and keep going." Anaya tapped her fork. "So it was a mistake." "It was, and it's fixed," I said. Their shoulders loosened. Children notice when adults choose the soft landing instead of the loud one. After dishes, I tugged down the attic hatch. A cardboard box slid into my hands. In the dining room, lamplight brushed the faint water ring on the ceiling, never fully gone a pale moon from a storm 2 summers back. I set the box on the table and opened the home safe inside it. A manila folder labeled Roof Co-Builders lay on top. At my desk, I slid out the invoice paid in full, dated 2 years ago. Materials, labor permit number, the audit trail every homeowner learns to keep. I set it beside the checkbook copy and opened my bank statements. The numbers lined up like clean stitches. I looked at that date, remembering the story dragged around family gatherings, the one about how I had spent tuition money on home cosmetics. Tuition, they called it. Cosmetic, they sneered. I placed the invoice on the check copy and took a picture. Facts don't shout, they stack. I dialed the contractor, Co-Builders. "This is Arliss Harlan. Work order from 2 summers ago, north roof and flashing. I need a duplicate invoice." Keys clicked. Order near 7719, completed June 14th. Paid in full. Email on file, yes. It'll be there in 5 minutes. I pulled a hard binder from the shelf and snapped in 2 fresh tabs. One read, Funds. Into it went the bank freeze paperwork and this morning's case number. The other tab read, Home. I slid the roof copies there, plus phone photos of the ceiling's faint ring, dated and labeled. On the spine, Harlan 2024 Proof. Anaya paused under the ceiling ring. "Did it ever get fixed all the way?" "It got fixed where it mattered," I said. "Sometimes a stain stays to remind you what you survived." She nodded. "Like my knee scar." "Exactly." I scanned each document and emailed the set to myself and to a cloud folder. Then I made a duplicate packet and sealed it in a zipper pouch. The kettle whistled as the printer spat the last page. I poured chamomile and watched the steam ribbon into the light. My phone buzzed. A neighborhood group post sat on the screen with a thumbnail framed like a courtroom exhibit. New video of Branson H. grabbing Kendrick H. "This isn't okay." Autoplay tried to start. My finger stopped it. I didn't react. I saved the file, noted the time and the poster's name, and captured a screenshot with the URL and timestamp. My face in the glass looked steady, older, tired of stories that collapse on contact with daylight. I set the phone down, finished my tea, and reached for the number on a worn sticky, the one for a person who knows how to separate noise from truth. The house was quiet. The ceiling ring was pale. The binder spine was firm under my hand. I breathed in and let the line start to ring. Tomorrow has a way of arriving whether you're braced for it or not. I would open the USB when the house was still, call the bank again, and walk into whatever the school threw next with my head up. I've taught thousands of children to show their work. Now I would show mine calmly, completely, and in ink no one could edit. By morning, the house moved like a well-oiled diner line. Eggs hissed, toast popped, and the kids leaned over their bowls while I topped off their milk. I kept my tone, even my pace ordinary. Order is a language children can read without being taught. Today. When the last lunchbox snapped shut, I carried my tea to the little office off the hall. I set the phone on its stand, opened the binders I'd built. Funds on the left. home on the right and squared a legal pad dead center. Today wasn't for speeches. Gabe answered on the second ring. His beard had gone grayer since I'd last seen him consulting for the district, but his eyes were the same patient blue. "You sent a message last night," he said. "Neighborhood video. I saved the post and the file," I said, sharing my screen. "It claims Branson grabbed Kendrick. We'll let the pixels tell us," he said. "Share the original link too, not just your download." He quieted as the clip opened in a window. He didn't watch the faces first. He watched the edges, the curb line, the parked sedan, the shadow under the mailbox. "Pause," he said. "Back 5 frames. Look at the shadows. The sun angle on the boy tracks right. The man's shadow lags by a beat. He toggled frame by frame. Interpolation artifacts. Someone stretched this." He toggled the audio on. The voices ran half a word early. "Desync," he muttered. "And that's not environmental mic hiss, that's room tone." I wrote the time and his notes as if I were back at a faculty meeting. Then I copied the post's URL, the uploader's handle, and the timestamp. "Chain of custody," I said aloud for my own spine. I mailed the file to him through a tamper-evident link the school still used for testing. He nodded when the checksum appeared. "Hash captured," he said. "Now let's see who your neighbor really broadcast." "Freeze there," Gabe said, tapping his pen toward a sliver of windshield on the parked sedan. He zoomed until the pixels teased a reflection, a chess logo distorted by glass. "That emblem," he said. "It's a Miami nightclub collab shirt. Limited run, never sold in Ohio." He ran metadata tools I didn't pretend to understand and pointed to a faint watermark buried in the lower right. "Uploaded from a Florida account, then recaptioned for your group. The audio spectrogram shows a splice at the exact second." The breath I let out sounded like a book closing. "Send me something I can staple," I said. "On it." Minutes later, a tidy PDF arrived with stills, arrows, hashes, and a paragraph my old principal would have applauded. I saved it to cloud and stick printed 2 copies and slid one into a fresh tab labeled Alibi. The other I put in a plastic pouch, the way you shelve a rare book. Then I dialed Branson's Union Hall. "This is Ms. Harlan," I said, when the steward picked up. "I need certified time records for yesterday evening." Ms. Calder didn't hesitate. "Badge swipes and gate camera are ours," she said. "Email," I spelled it twice. 10 minutes later, my inbox pinged. Certified timesheets place my son clocked in at 5:42 p.m., still on site at 8:17. A gate camera, still the kind that makes you sit up straighter, showed his shoulder turning as he waved to a coworker at the exact minute the video claimed he was on our street. Miles apart. I printed those too and flagged them with orange tabs. At the desk, I built the packet Gabe's report screenshots of the post and its deletion the union certification with digital seal. I slid a sheet protector over the whole stack and wrote in black marker, "Truth sourced." It was ballast. The kids were home on a half day by then. I set grilled cheese on plates and a pot of tomato soup between us. "We're doing a kitchen lesson," I said. "Why we check a recipe before we start cooking?" Kendrick grinned. "Because otherwise the cookies taste like salt." Exactly. Online stuff is like recipes. Before we believe it, we look for ingredients, where it came from, who posted it, and if the steps make sense. They help me stick colored labels on the binder tabs. Anaya smoothed one down with her palm as if closing a wound. A few minutes later, the neighborhood post vanished. I didn't. I filed a quiet report with the platform and attached Gabe's summary. I've spent a lifetime teaching children to cite their sources. It felt right to ask grown-ups to do the same. When dishes were done, I wrote one line on a card and slid it into the binder's clear sleeve. "I will not negotiate with lies." It looked small, but steadying. My phone buzzed on the counter. An airline confirmation blinked inside the family email alias, "Kirill outbound to Miami tomorrow before dawn." I screenshotted it, forwarded it to myself, and circled the date on the wall calendar. Custody law started ticking in my head the way a metronome keeps time. I set the calendar pen down and picked up the later envelope from the hutch. The USB Kendrick had passed me lay inside like a key I wasn't ready to turn. I locked the envelope back in the safe, stacked the packets by the door, and breathed the way my doctor taught me square counts, calm through the exhale. Tomorrow wouldn't wait for me. It never does. But now I had a clock, a map, and names on paper that wouldn't smudge. Miami wasn't a postcard anymore. It was a plan. And plans, if you build them right, become doors no bully can hold shut. Before sunrise, the house sounded like a library, quiet, paper soft. I brewed coffee, printed the airline receipt that popped up last night Carol to Miami, and slid it into a new tab I labeled Custody. On my screen, the Ohio statutes sat open like hymn pages I grew up with steadiness in black and white. Beside the keyboard waited the binders I'd built funds, home, alibi stacked like stepping stones. I sharpened 2 pencils, squared a yellow pad, and told myself softly, "We move when the clock moves." At 6, I clicked into a video window and met Jasper Hale. He'd tried more cases than I've graded book reports, and he brought the same calm a good teacher brings to a noisy room. "Walk me through what you have," he said. I did lining evidence like desks, Gabe's deep fake report, the union's gate still, the roof invoice that had been twisted into tuition, the Miami confirmation. He listened without interruption, then lifted a finger. 3 immediate remedies. We file a narrow temporary order, no travel without written consent, plus a police assist clause. We notify CPS so they aren't weaponized. And we set a school holding code. "I can do that," I said. It felt good to say. "Good," he replied. "Now let's trace that Miami ticket." Per his direction, I called the airline's records desk, gave the confirmation number, and asked for metadata. The agent was kind but crisp like a nurse on night shift. 20 minutes later, an email landed booking channel payer #seat number. One detail tinted the edges of my day. She'd booked 2 seats her own, and a lap designation flagged for a minor. I printed, circled, and slid the page under custody. A lap is not a car seat. A lap is how you vanish between gates. I sent Asha at CPS a tidy update, with attachments the deepfake proof, the union alibi, the ticket trail. Subject line, travel risk, courtesy check requested. I copied Jasper and filed the sent notice into a clear sleeve. Labeling steadies me. It turns fear into work. The children woke to oatmeal and sliced strawberries. "We're keeping our normal," I told them. "I have a meeting to make sure school and home stay the same." They packed library books, checked homework folders, and practiced their shoe bin routine as if steadiness were a dance. When they asked if anything was wrong, I said what was true. Adults are correcting mistakes. That's why we write things down. By 9, I was downtown binder in my tote and an old Courage in my back. Jasper's office smelled faintly of paper and peppermint. We signed what needed, signing my custodial continuity statement, an exhibit list, and a short motion with the teeth it needed no travel without written consent. Police assist authority if anyone tried to remove the children. The clerk stamped digital copies and emailed them back before my tea cooled. "Last piece," Jasper said, sliding a printed transcript across the table. "Voicemail to Carol from an unknown number at 8:42 p.m. last night." The words were thin but ugly. "Use grandma's address gap. Pick up after school, straight to children's, then airport. That's a common tactic," he said. "Say medical, and people stop asking questions." "We won't," I answered. A part of me that used to call bus duty tightened into a knot. "What's our counter-school protocol?" he said, dialing the principal. Mr. Delgado joined by speaker within minutes. We agreed on a no-release rule for 48 hours pending the judge's review. No one takes a child without an authorization that matches the file in a code word. Jasper looked at me. I thought of shorebirds pacing the edge of waves. "Sandpiper," I said. We put it in the record-added photo ID requirements and logged the call. Back at my desk, I filed the stamped orders into custody and made a separate school section with the code word memo. Then I drove home and after snack time practiced with the kids. If anyone says ER visit, what do you ask? Anaya giggled and shouted, "Sandpiper." Kendrick rolled his eyes like a 7th grader trying not to smile. We practiced once more, and then I let them return to their math, the world smaller and safer than it had been at breakfast. Near 4 o'clock, my phone pinged. Asha acknowledged receipt of the packet and noted a courtesy welfare check. Seconds later, Mrs. Long, 2 doors down, texted a doorbell clip, Carol's SUV idling past our houses after midnight license plate crisp in the porch light. I thanked her, archived the file, and wrote the time in my log. The day had turned into a net. The holes were smaller now. Night settled with the kind of quiet that feels earned. I brewed chamomile and set the Miami receipt on top of the custody tab like a weight. On a sticky note, I wrote 4 words and pressed it to the plastic. Not on my watch. I closed the binder with both hands the way you close a piano after a recital, gentle final. Then the phone buzzed one more time. The airline pushed an update flight, moved up seat, changed near an exit row. I circled the new time in red, forwarded the notice to Jasper, and typed 1 word to him: advancing. In my mind, I pictured the school's front office counter, the place where stories slow down and records don't blink. If she moved the clock forward, so would I, only my hands would land on the judge's seal first. I set my alarm for 5:30 and tucked the order in my bag. Keys waiting, early steady, so set. Ready at dawn, steady. By first bell, the hallway clocks hummed like quiet engines. I stood in the front office, court-stamped orders in my bag, sandpiper memo in hand. Mr. Delgado greeted me with the calm of someone who's seen every variety of parent storm. "We've got your paperwork scanned and the hold in place, Mrs. Miller," he said. "Today's window is secure." I nodded, glancing at the digital clock behind him. 7:58. Everything that mattered was already written down. At the counter, the receptionist clicked through screens and added a red flag beside the children's names. The color almost matched the polish on her nails. "You'll stay on campus, correct?" she asked. "Signed in as visitor, yes ma'am," I replied, pen to line. The sound of that pen was the sound of ground being held. Mr. Delgado walked me through dismissal flow like a pilot running pre-flight, where cars would queue, where staff stood with tablets where I'd wait. "If there's any doubt," he said, "we escort the student straight back inside." We paused at the curb, the asphalt still damp from last night's rain. "Calm is policy," I told him. "I can do calm." A short woman in uniform approached badge, glinting Officer Kyrie, the school resource officer. "We'll have a patrol unit 1 block south," she said. "Silent radio checks every half hour. Nothing visible unless needed." Her tone was even her posture ready. It was the kind of reassurance that doesn't make promises, it makes plans. By lunch, the courtyard smelled like pizza and mulch. I sat on a bench reading the same line of my notebook 3 times until my phone buzzed. Jasper's message, flight still advanced. "Watch dismissal." I typed back, "On post." My breath came slow, 4 and 6, out the rhythm I'd learned in childbirth classes long before my children forgot who taught them. At 2:35, the dismissal line began to snake. Minivans idled. Teachers checked names on tablets. I stayed in my assigned slot car, running eyes scanning mirrors. Then I saw it. Carol's SUV, 2 cars behind the crosswalk cap, pulled low. My pulse didn't spike. It narrowed. A staffer leaned toward my granddaughter near the gate. "Your mom's here, emergency appointment." My heart thudded once. Anaya squared her shoulders and asked, "What's the code word?" Carol's mouth moved. I could see it even from my distance. "Seagull," she said. "Wrong bird. Wrong day." The staffer straightened immediately. "Come with me, sweetheart." Protocol moved like choreography, calm, direct, practiced. The line slowed, then resumed. Officer Kyrie appeared from the doorway, her presence quiet but unmistakable. She stepped beside Carol's driver's side window. "Ma'am, code word, please." "I don't need one. I'm their mother." Carol snapped, reaching for something on the seat. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Kyrie's tone never rose. Her hand hovered near her radio, not her holster. 2 teachers guided the next group of kids past without a ripple. Control is sometimes the absence of noise. While Carol argued in tight circles, this is harassment. Mr. Delgado ushered my grandchildren back into the office. I caught Kendrick's eye. He looked more confused than scared. Good. Confusion fades faster than fear. As Kyrie and another staffer escorted Kirill aside, I noticed movement at the far corner. A sedan idled by the stop sign. Sunglasses. Phone to ear. When the driver turned slightly, I recognized the jawline Dominic. He rolled forward, pretending to adjust his mirror. The pattern was obvious distraction handoff exit. I memorized the partial plate and the dent on the left fender. Inside, Mr. Delgado handed me the release log. "Sign here, please." I wrote my name, the ink steady, as if it belonged to someone less tired. Officer Kyrie radioed the unit stationed nearby, relaying Dominic's plate fragment. "Copy that," came the reply. Out the window, the sedan pulled away, turning south. My grandchildren stood by the vending machine, holding hands the way siblings do when they finally believe the grown-ups have it handled. We left through the staff lot, not the main curb. The sun had shifted, making the asphalt shimmer. I opened the car doors, waited for seatbelts to click, and exhaled through a smile. "You both did perfect," I said. "What do we say when something doesn't feel right?" Anaya grinned, proud and small, all at once. "We ask for the code word." "That's right." Back home, we reheated soup and made peanut butter sandwiches. I texted Jasper and Asha short summaries attached the office log photo. "All stable," Jasper replied. "Stability, what a fragile, necessary word." At 6, Officer Kyrie called. "We logged the incident," she said. "Your suspect vehicle circled the airport access road, then left heading west. We've opened a brief report number for your file." I wrote it down, thanked her, and slid the note into the custody tab. The house was finally quiet when my laptop pinged. New email from Carol's account. Subject only, "You won't stop me." No message body, just a calendar invite titled "Farewell Picnic." Sunday, 2 p.m., local park. I stared at the word farewell until it blurred. Then I printed the invite and filed it under a new tab, Sunday. She couldn't pry them loose at the curb, so she was moving the board to Sunday, public, sunny, and performative. And this time, I wouldn't just prepare. I'd arrive first. By Sunday noon, the sky over Goodale Park looked like clean laundry on a line bright moving ordinary. I parked near the North Pavilion and arrived early on purpose. 30 minutes the way a teacher always does. I chose a picnic table that faced the walking loop, and the footbridge texted my live location to Jasper and Asha and reminded the kids to stay where I could see their shoelaces. We set napkins like little flags. Breath in, breath out. Readiness is just calm with a job to do. I walked the area the way I'd walk a classroom before the bell count benches, note the shelter posts clock the 2 exits. Officer Kyrie, off-duty in running gear, waved from the path and tipped her head toward a patrol car that would circle every so often. "We're nearby, if needed," she murmured as she stretched. I tucked my tote under the table bench, the zipper facing me. No drama, just lanes. Mrs. Long arrived with lemonade and her easy, nosy laugh, the kind that sounds like front porches. A family from church took the next table and unpacked grapes and paper plates. Witnesses are better than bodyguards. They look like community because they are. The children laid out sandwiches and a bowl of chips while I kept my voice warm and my eyes working. At 12:41, my phone buzzed with a group text from Carol Farewell Picnic Family Only. She'd chosen a word that does the arranging for you. It turned the park into a stage and the rest of us into props. I replied with a screenshot of the court order and typed, "We're at the North Pavilion. Keep it civil." The bubbles on the screen blinked, then vanished. I knelt so I was eye level with the kids. "Same rules as school," I said. "If someone asks you to go somewhere, you ask for the code word. Stay within sight. If your stomach says no, you don't move your feet." Mr. Delgado's wife, Elena, who had come as a friend, offered to sit with them at the blanket and start a craft with yarn and beads. Small hands chose colors. Small shoulders lowered. At 1:05, I saw her coming up the path, sunlight polished into her sunglasses. A portable speaker bounced in her tote, already chirping happy music. Family she called arms wide. Heads turned. Strangers smiled at the word. She angled herself between the kids and the footbridge. "Let's take a short walk for a family moment." I stepped forward and held the folded paper between us like a neutral object. "Code word first," I said. Her smile thinned. "Really? Helen, in public?" She tried to laugh. "Fine. Seagull. Wrong bird again." The children didn't move. Elena kept a palm near their shoulders and didn't speak. Carol pivoted to the crowd without missing a beat. "We're healing," she announced to whoever would listen. Forgiveness is the only way. Some people cling to paperwork and keep children from their mother. I opened the cooler to get water, or that's how it looked. Nestled beside ice packs, the small lens faced the open space. "You're leaving with me today," Kirill hissed toward the table edge, the smile never changing for the bystanders. Out by the service drive, a gray sedan idled. Sunglasses, phone to ear, Dominic. He pretended to study the map board. I watched his hands. They were empty, but empty hands can still pull strings. I closed the cooler and stood at the pavilion center, so my voice would carry, but not boom. 2 sentences, I said, holding the order, not waving it. A judge has ordered that there will be no transfer of custody today or any day until further hearing. The school log requires a code word for pickup. That word protects children, including yours. I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at my grandchildren. Murmurs change temperature like a room when someone opens a window. Officer Kyrie passed nearby and lifted 2 fingers in a small hello. A marked unit rolled slowly along the loop and paused near the lot. Dominic reversed his car into a different angle, then thought better of it and nosed forward. I gave the officer the smallest shake of my head. Presence was enough. Escalation would write its own kind of story, and I wasn't in that business. We reset the afternoon. The kids moved to the adjacent table to glue leaves onto paper and make crowns out of pipe cleaners. Mrs. Long told a story about her cat stealing Sunday ham. The church family chatted about art night at school. The point became visible to anyone actually watching. We weren't hiding. We were living. Carol lingered by the pavilion post, speaking into her phone with theatrical patience. When she noticed no audience remained, the patience drained away. I packed slowly. Calm has a sound, the slide of a zipper, the soft thud of folded blankets, the clink of a thermos lid. I handed Carol a printed summary sheet, the order excerpt, the school code word memo, the front office log. "When you're ready to follow rules, we'll talk in daylight," I said, not a threat, a door she could choose to walk through. She didn't take the paper, so I set it on the table where the wind wouldn't get it. We left by the north lot the way we came. The car smelled like sunscreen and grape juice. The children compared their crowns in the rearview mirror, and I let the radio play a station that knew the difference between noise and music. My phone buzzed once Asha received your location pings. "If anything shifts, call." "All steady," I typed back at the red light. The crowd saw the paper speak for me. Monday would hear it. Okay, bye. Monday morning, the picnic was just a line in my binder and a steadier rhythm in the house. I set the cooler on the counter, slid out the SD card, and built a clean packet on the kitchen table court order. On top, school log behind it. 3 stills from the cooler cam labeled by minute and second. I sealed the card in a small envelope and signed across the tape like I used to sign across manila folders for field trips. Jasper and Mr. Martinez got my text, "On my way." Chain intact. The courthouse always smells like old paper and cold air. With Mr. Martinez at my elbow, we filed an emergency addendum. Travel restricted visits supervised the picnic recording, offered under seal. The clerk stamped the bailiff-logged receipt, and I said thank you to both. Like I mean it because I do. Procedure isn't glamorous, but it holds. A staff attorney met us in the corridor outside chambers. Mr. Martinez gave the 2-minute version. I added 1 sentence because 1 was enough. The code word is a seatbelt. We keep it buckled. She looked at the photos, nodded once, and said she would brief the judge between dockets. No speeches, just work. At the credit union, the fraud rep brought a cart of forms that squeaked like grocery wheels. Jasper joined by phone, voice crisp as copy paper. Irregular transfers were flagged small ones that learn your pulse, then larger ones that take your breath. We authorized blocks. I signed a notarized affidavit about observed coercion and the house repair card that never fixed a house. Temporary holds landed on the accounts. With a thud, I could feel more than hear. Protection sometimes sounds like doors clicking shut. I drove to the school with a sack of clementines. The counselor initialed the custody note and stuck a calm green dot on the page. The kids showed me their art pipe cleaner. Crowns had become bent halos in the backpack shuffle. I touched a shoulder, reminded them of the code word, and let them run back to class. The bell sounded like a small metal heart. The call came at noon while I sat in the parking lot looking at the courthouse clock on my phone. Mr. Martinez looped me into a recorded line. Dominic, voice lower than I'd ever heard it, said he wanted to make it right. He hinted at emails of fake CPS template car title shuffles and a plan that had already started to collapse under its own weight. I can bring proof, he said. Mr. Martinez named a place with glass walls and a librarian who follows rules. We met in a study room at the main library, the kind with clean tables and a view of the stacks. Dominic slid a thumb drive and a thin stack of prints across the table. Hotel, receipts, a voice note transcribed into flat words, a draft of a false report that used my name like a wrench. Martinez read a limited-use proffer aloud, underlining the parts about truth and limits. I watched and said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only adult in the room. Do I get something? Dominic asked after signing palms up like he'd carried bricks. You get noted, Martinez answered. You don't get promises about outcomes. Dominic looked at me, then eyes hunting for a softer answer. I won't barter away the children's safety, I said. I wasn't angry. I was finished. By mid-afternoon, Chambers emailed assigned interim supervised visits at the county family center. No out-of-county travel, financial holds, upheld pending hearing. Martinez forwarded the order to the bank and the school before I could finish reading the first paragraph. Systems aren't perfect, but when they line up, you can hear the click. At home, we did homework on the porch table. I brewed tea in the chipped blue pot my mother used on Fridays. Asha called to check logistics, and we penciled in the visitation slot like it was a dentist appointment, because sometimes putting fear in a calendar takes away half its teeth. Inside the house felt like a house again. No shoes in the hallway, a bowl of apples, a lamp left on just long enough to say welcome. The mailbox held a plain card with a picture of yesterday's pavilion printed from a phone. On the back block, letters mothers should know their place. I put it on the counter, took 3 photos, front-back envelope, and slid it into a sleeve marked Post. Mr. Martinez texted back in less than a minute, log it. Do not reply. I wrote the time on a sticky note and stuck it to my own pulse. I ended the day where I began at the table with papers that felt heavier than their weight. I labeled a new envelope Dominic Proffer and tucked the thumb drive inside. The Cooler Cam SD went into the safe. 2 small go bags rested by the front door like obedient dogs. I walked through the rooms, touching chair backs and door frames, the way you touch shoulders in a noisy classroom to say I'm here. Out on the porch, the sky held the last of the light. The neighbor's wind chime picked a simple tune. I made a promise I could keep. I would be big where it counted and small where it didn't. Paper shields aren't the point, they're the proof. The stakes are real because the children are real, and tomorrow we carry the proof where it needs to go. Before bed, I stood at the kitchen window and watched the street-settle porch lights winking on a jogger passing with a reflective leash, the mail truck finally done. I let the quiet measure me. I am not angry. I am awake. Tomorrow is for court, not combat. Tuesday began with lists. I laid out snack bags, pencils, and the soft blanket Chloe likes for car rides. While oatmeal thickened, we rehearsed the code word the way you practice looking both ways, calm, automatic. If someone forgets the word, you don't argue, I said. You find the nearest adult with a badge and breathe. We repeated it until their shoulders loosened. I snapped photos of the bags for my log, texted our schedule to Mr. Martinez and Asha, and slid the stamped order into the front sleeve of my binder. At the courthouse hallway, a clerk in a navy sweater called our case number for morning status. The interim order stood as written. The bailiff added that visitation staff would file notes the same day if anything went sideways. No speeches, no theater, just boundaries, spoken into a room where paper becomes rule. I thanked the clerk because gratitude keeps me human on days when I could harden. The visitation center smelled like crayons and hand soap. A supervisor named Ms. Greer walked us past a mural and into a room with one-way glass. She explained the rules: no whispering, no pocketed items, everything on the table. I signed the orientation sheet and knelt to eye level. "You can stay as quiet as you want," I told them. "Point to a game if you need a break." They nodded and stared at the painted blue sky. I stepped into the observation lounge and watched Carol arrive with gift bags the size of laundry baskets. Ms. Greer logged each item, tugging ribbons to make sure nothing hid inside. Carol smiled at the camera like it was an audience. The timer chirped. The visit began. At first, it looked like sweetness, over bright, over loud. Carol piled toys promised outings when all this is over and pressed her cheek to Chloe's hair. Then she bent low and began to whisper. I read the shape of the words, "Say Grandma hurts Daddy." Aiden glanced toward the glass, then the ceiling mic, then down at his shoes. He found the posted room rules with his eyes and held there. Some lessons stick faster than you expect. 10 minutes later, the sugar hardened. Carol palmed a small plastic toy, lifted it, and let it slip to the floor. "Ouch!" she gasped, grabbing Chloe's wrist. "You pushed me." The overhead mic caught the cue before the performance, 2 small words. "Now say." Ms. Greer was in the doorway before the toy stopped spinning. "We're going to pause," she said evenly. She asked Chloe if she was okay. Chloe stared at the carpet and said I didn't push. The camera saw what the camera saw, and the room went quiet except for the timer's soft tick. The children asked to end early. No sobbing, no scene, just small bodies that had spent their courage and wanted air. In the supervisor's office, Ms. Greer documented the coercion attempt, noted the whisper on the recording, and suspended Carol's time pending review. Copies would go to the court and CPS before lunch. I signed where a grandmother signs as the person who brought them and the person who would take them home. By afternoon, we were back at the courthouse with the packet from the center. Mr. Martinez slid it to the clerk, then added the postcard from last night. Chain of custody labels were read into the record: who sealed, who carried, who opened. The judge asked for the short version. Mr. Martinez gave him 10 sentences. That's a kindness most lawyers don't practice. Then the match struck. On the screen, metadata lit up for the fake CPS template, the author field creation time, and the IP block that didn't belong to any county office. The clerk played Dominic's voice note, the one he handed over at the library, admitting the scheme like a man out of road. The orders tightened notch by notch: supervised visits only, parenting class enrollment, no contact outside the center, no travel, no curb pickups, no more farewell shows in parks. In the parking lot, Kirill stood by her car and stared jaw set so tight I could see the hinge work. Officer Kyrie lingered near the stairwell. I buckled Chloe, and Aiden checked Kendrick's seatbelt twice and kept my eyes on the buckles. No words. Some messages don't require sound. At home, the day softened around the edges. We made mac and cheese and split an apple 3 ways while homework spread across the table like placemats. I told Aiden I was proud he remembered to look for the sign and the mic. Chloe asked, "Does telling the truth always hurt?" "It can," I said, "but it holds." We folded laundry. We set tomorrow's shoes by the door. Ordinary is a kind of healing if you let it be. After sunset, an unknown number flashed and dropped before the second ring. Mr. Martinez told me to log it and move on. I updated the emergency contact sheet on the fridge, taped fresh batteries into the flashlight, and set my phone to record unknown callers automatically. The go bags waited where they always do now, politely visible. I walked the hallway once, touching the door frames like I was taking attendance in an old classroom. When the house finally settled, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the stamped orders drying on the rack. Boundaries aren't walls, they're handrails. Today we held on. And tomorrow, if another hand tries to yank those rails away, the record will already be waiting. I rinsed the mugs, switched off the porch light, and set my keys in the blue dish by the door. Small, steady rituals keep a house upright when the wind outside tries to rename us. We carry on. Wednesday began with the same blue dish by the door and same lists on my counter. The house was quiet, not empty, the kind of quiet that means everyone slept, not that we were unafraid. I poured coffee, checked the fridge sheet, and touched the stamped order on the corkboard like a light switch. Boundaries aren't walls, they're handrails. Last night we held on. Today would test the grip. A knock came at 8, firm and polite. I checked the chain and the porch cam. Asha stood beside Pastor Gabe, faces open. Voluntary circle, she called through the glass. I let them in the smell of wet leaves following their coats. Under the foyer mirror, I had taped a copy of the judge's order. It wasn't there to taunt anyone. It was there to steady me. In the living room, I set a kitchen timer and laid out the talking stone from my classroom days. Rules sat simple on a card: we speak. In turns, we keep voices low. We tell the truth we can carry. I texted Mr. Martinez that we were starting and slid my phone face down on the mantel. The kids colored at the dining table within earshot. Jasper arrived 5 minutes late, shoulders bent like he'd been walking uphill a long time. "I want to speak as your son, not as her husband," he said. Pastor Gabe nodded toward the stone. I passed it over. "Mom, I let a storm move into our house," Jasper said. I kept thinking if I worked harder, the roof would stop leaking. It didn't. He drew a breath. "I can't fix yesterday, but I can stand where the leak comes from." I held my own stone of silence for a breath. "We are not hosting storms," I said. "We are building rails. Under the order, all contact stays at the center. No side dinners, no parking lot compromises." Asha confirmed it, gently reading the line about supervised visitation. Jasper nodded, jaw setting like a clamp. "Then I'll follow the rails." A second knock cracked the moment. I checked the cam. Valora Carril's sister stood on the porch with her phone up, recording through the storm door glass. "The internet loves transparency," she sang. I kept the door locked and read the order clearly for her mic. "This address is under court protection. You may not film the children or attempt contact." I dialed non-emergency and stayed still. Inside, the kids went quiet on cue. Officer Kyrie pulled to the curb within minutes. She took Valora's name-explained trespass and offered a printed notice. Valora kept filming but stepped back to the sidewalk. Asha logged the attempt as proximity that could chill the children. Nobody yelled, nobody won. We just held our line while the world scrolled past. Back in the living room, the timer ticked. Dr. Wallace joined by video. "No forced forgiveness," she said. "Repair is steady, not sudden." Aiden read, "I want jokes at breakfast and no surprises at pickup." Chloe asked, "Can we forgive without opening the door?" "Yes," I said. "Forgiveness is inside work. Doors are outside work." At noon, paperwork replaced feelings. Mr. Martinez called on speaker. The freezes held. The restitution ledger started. Auto pays in Jasper's name were unwound. "Rails, not cages," I said, and wrote it on a sticky for the binder. We scheduled the gal interview, and I set a reminder to print attendance. Ordinary tasks felt like sandbags against a river. Mid-afternoon brought mail. Among catalogs and a dental reminder sat a letter from the Postal Inspection Service. It referenced a pattern of counterfeit postcards like the one we'd logged now under review for possible federal referral. I photographed the letter, forwarded it, and felt a knot loosen between my shoulders. Outside eyes were arriving, the kind that don't argue. They audit. I wrote the case number on a yellow tab and slid the letter beside the cooler card, 2 small pages guarding a large promise. By 5, hunger called a truce. I pulled out Richard's carpenter's level. "Your granddad checked true lines twice before a single nail," I told the kids. We held the level to the house rules board and nudged until the bubble centered. "That's us," I said. "We check twice, then we act." After dishes, Jasper stood in the hallway with an overnight bag. "I need to stay here a while," he said. "Spare room, okay, the room is fine," I said. "Conditions are clear. Center-only visits, no side channels, full access to your pickup calendar." He agreed. He deleted shared cloud folders with Kirill and set his phone on the counter. Trust doesn't return on a promise, it returns on proof. Night came down soft. I updated the fridge sheet, tucked a go bag by the door, and checked the porch cam. Jasper read to the kids while I laid out 3 lunches. The house felt smaller than last month, but stronger, like a boat you stop overloading. I pressed the thumbtacks deeper, Rails, not walls. Rails we built together. Before lights out, I stepped onto the porch with chamomile. The block was quiet porch lights winking on down the street. I thought of the level and of Richard tapping a sill to find the stud. We'll hold, I told the night. We'll hold because we measure. The timer beeped once. I locked the door and let the house breathe. By bedtime, the loose wire from yesterday felt less like a spark and more like a clipped end tucked safe in a junction box. No banner, no parade, something better a day where rules held and children laughed at mac and cheese jokes. Tomorrow would bring paperwork and people again. Tonight was for steady hearts and level lines. Friday morning came soft and gray, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. I poured black coffee, left the sugar untouched. The spoon never even clinked the cup. On the counter sat Jasper's ironed shirt, blue like calm water that hasn't decided whether to ripple. He stood at the doorway, tie still draped around his neck. We didn't say much, just enough. The children's note stayed folded in my purse, crayon hearts, 3 signatures, and a sentence that read, "We love you, Nana." Don't be scared, I wasn't. I'd spent all my fear already. The courthouse in Cook County is a place that hums quietly even when no one's talking. Fluorescent lights, marble floors, air that smells faintly of toner and patience. Mr. Martinez met us by the metal detector, his briefcase full of our months, USBs, affidavits, the postal inspector letter, Dominic's notarized confession. Asha stood near the guardian ad litem, both nodding their morning hellos. I took my seat in the second row behind Jasper. Optics matter. Respect looks different from compliance. When the judge entered, every shuffle stopped. "Call to order," the clerk said. Petitions outlined custody, conversion, visitation, supervision, financial misconduct, deferred for civil track. Kirill arrived late, limping for effect sunglasses inside. Valora wasn't there. Her online expose had been quietly flagged and removed. Dominic wasn't either, but his statement was, I fixed my eyes on the state seal above the bench. You can't make progress staring at old wounds. Mr. Martinez started the slow climb of evidence paper over passion. Asha corroborated the reports. Dr. Wallace's summary sat steady in the record, her phrasing clear pattern of coercion, consistent with protective parent fatigue. Photos, text exports, timestamps, receipts. The judge asked me one question. Why record? I said. Because shouting didn't work. A courtroom has no use for poetry, but truth often fits in a single line. Then came the performance. Carol flipped her hair, raised her chin, and claimed I'd alienated her children from her. She's bitter, she said, a classic mother-in-law problem. She waved printouts of edited screenshots. Martinez countered with the original's metadata intact. Asha added city noise stamps that proved the timing. You can fake anything, Carol snapped, asked Dominic. The word dropped like a pin on tile. Silence. Even her lawyer blinked. The judge looked down at the file marked with Dominic's name. The clerk read from his sworn statement the one he'd handed over weeks earlier. It outlined relocation plans, asset sales, and notes about using school pickup as cover. Carol jumped to her feet. He's lying because I left him. The judge tapped her gavel once. Sit down, Mrs. Crow. Jasper declined to speak. The documents speak, he said. The sound of paper against wood carried more weight than her tears ever could. During recess, Carol muttered near a hot mic too close to the bench. If that old woman had just kept quiet, we'd be in Miami by now. The reporter's eyes flicked up. Martinez rose. Your Honor, we request that be entered into the record. The judge nodded. I didn't move. People reveal themselves when they think no one's listening. That's the quiet justice of it. The ruling came with the rhythm of a gavel heartbeat. Jasper granted sole decision-making, primary residence with him, supervised visitation for Carol at South Loop Center, mandatory parenting and therapy completion, protective order extended 1 year, financial discovery to continue under audit. Mrs. Farah, the judge, said, "Thank you for choosing documentation over drama." I nodded once. It was all the victory I needed. Outside, the sunlight felt almost too bright. Kirill lunged toward me, voice sharp. You think you've won, Officer Kyrie stepped between us before breath became chaos. I said, "You still have a road back, but it's paved with work, not blame." She called me a witch. I let the word fall. Not everything thrown at you has to be caught. We left in silence, the kind that protects. A few days later at the visitation center, I sat in a plastic chair pretending to read a magazine. Jasper and Asha oversaw the visit. The kids stayed cautious, polite. Leo offered Carol a quick sideways hug. Staff remained within reach. Healing looked nothing like movies. It was measured, recorded, and painfully ordinary. And that was fine. Saturday came with light through the porch curtains, the smell of biscuits, wood polish, and second chances. I opened Nana's workshop and kitchen in the converted sunroom. Kids from the neighborhood mixed dough beside widowers learning to stir again. Pastor Gabe blessed the space. Jasper mounted new shelves. Above the door, I pinned the crayon note the children had written before court. Love deserved a room with windows. That evening, we ate on the front steps, teacups, mismatched, laughter real. Jasper passed the pot. The kids argued over cinnamon. I let them. The house that was once a battlefield had become a classroom. I thought of every time I was told I did nothing. Turns out doing nothing looked a lot like building a refuge where truth could sit down and breathe. In the end, I didn't raise my voice, I raised a standard. And that changed everything. In the end, I learned a simple truth. You don't win a family back by shouting. You hold a line and let the facts do the talking. Boundaries are love with a backbone. Paper trails protect the quiet. Community steadies your hands. If my story helps you ask yourself, what standard will you raise in your home this week? What proof? What allies? What calm plan will you keep? I'd love to hear from you. Drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't land, say why. If this moved you, please subscribe to the channel and stay for the next story. Share this with someone who needs a voice. Remember, dignity isn't noise, it's consistency. Thanks for standing with grandmothers who won't fade.